See a hack, get impressed by the hack, forget about the hack.
That seems to be my 3-step process for when I come across a hack that actually looks useful on YouTube or TikTok. And I'm always a little bit skeptical of those hacks that make a painful task look 10 times easier. So today, I'm finally gonna put some of the absurd hacks that I see to the test. First up, there's a guy that claims that I've been pulling fuses out the wrong way my entire life. It looks perfectly logical and a lot easier than my method of hurting my fingers or using pliers.
After working on my CBR for the last 2 months, I even struggled to find the fuse box on my R1. But after finding it behind door number 2, I came across the first problem.
Even if this method of pulling a fuse out does actually work, that still means that I need to get a fuse out in the first place to pull another one out. I don't have one lying around here. Chances are if I want to replace a blown fuse, I'm going to want to use one of these spare ones in any case. So no matter what, I need my pliers.
So with pliers at the ready, I went for the spare 10 amp fuse, since the spares are usually the easiest to pull out. And then I bumped into the second problem. These fuses are not shaped like the ones in the video. In fact, they do fit over the other fuses, but they don't hook underneath them, leaving this hack busted and gets a 0 out of 10.
I suspect cars use bigger fuses than bikes do, and those are the only ones shaped this way. But it does make me feel slightly better. It's not something that I've been missing all these years, it's just that it wasn't there in the first place. In the last year, I've used steel wool and metal polish to polish the headers on an MT-09, a GS, my R1 and a Fireblade. And every time, it's a slow and painful process. But this video gave me an idea.
First, I had to sneakily steal a cordless drill from next door because mine is that old-fashioned corded type. I also figured a steel drill bit was fitting for steel wool. Then I grabbed a chunk of it and for the first time ever, intentionally tried to get something caught in a drill bit. I was reluctant to smooth it out with my hand because those little metal pieces can easily give you splinters, but it wasn't as bad as I thought. And then all that was left to do was to get some metal polish applied to it in a rather messy way. The hardest areas by hand are always in tight places, like around this bracket for example that's meant for a heat shield. So I figured if it did that well, I would be impressed. And I have to say, in about 90 seconds, it got rid of a few marks and definitely looks shinier.
To be honest, I'm a little surprised that this even works. It has bullshit written all over it, but I'm actually really impressed. Plus, I seem to go through less steel wool like this than by hand, because by hand, it squashes into a useless ball within seconds. So this seems to last longer. But now for my biggest concern, how difficult is it to get it off?
Even that was effortless.
That was really easy. I put it in reverse, hit the button, pulled it off, and here it is. Nice, neat ball.
So the only downside is the mess of steel wool it flings everywhere, but the question is, will I do this in the future?
I think first prize would still be a Dremel of sorts, but as far as a hack goes, this is pretty clever. I might use it again, especially considering I'm too cheap to buy a Dremel. So 9 out of 10.
Did you know you would normally do this to air up a tire? Well, you don't need this. So if you just take the end of your hose and do this, you're airing up your tire. Now you know.
Now, I've tried this one in the past and it did not work. In fact, it dislodged the O-ring in the connector here so that every time you attach something, it just leaked air. But I still see people doing this successfully to this day, so I think that I should try again. So to be fair, this is the hose that came with the compressor bundle. So it's not the fanciest hose. It's one of those kits where you get the compressor, the hose, an air gun, a tire inflator, a spray painter, all the essentials for working on a motorcycle. But I'm not sure. Surely these connectors are all the same. It should work. Hopefully it was just me in the past, but let's try again.
I had a strange feeling that I was forgetting something, going to pump up my tires with just an air hose. The strategy doesn't look very complicated, you just press it on, but I wasn't sure if it was working or not. So I deflated the tire a bit and took a pressure reading to get a baseline and tried again. I tried pressing harder, I tried different angles, and I got all sorts of rushing air noises. But after a few minutes of faffing, the pressure hadn't moved at all.
I can now definitively say that the problem is either motorcycles in general or my cheap air hose. I'm not sure which one. I don't know how people get this to work. I've even tried these 90-degree valve stems and the straight valve stems. They're all Schrader valve stems like you'd find on a car or a truck. So I don't know what the difference could possibly be. And you can see how it's already changed the angle of the O-ring inside here, and I'm gonna have to fix it. But to be honest, I don't know why you'd want to do this in the first place. Maybe on a truck where you just want air in the tire, but on a motorcycle, you want your tire pressure to be fairly accurate, and you're not gonna get that with this. So assuming it works on a car or at all, 4 out of 10. If you want to feel like a slow mechanic, watch this video of a MotoGP mechanic. Now, there's a lot of cool stuff going on there, but I think my favorite part is how there is a built-in holder for the axle on the paddock stand. I always take my axle out and put it on the floor, but then you get dirt on the axle and grease on the floor. I've also seen people put it inside the exhaust before, which looks cool, but then you get grease in the exhaust, if you care about that.
So I looked around for any way to bodge my own version of this and found an aluminium tube lying around on the messy side of my workshop that never ends up on camera for obvious reasons. I don't think this tube is big enough for my rear axle to fit inside, but there's only one way to find out. And unfortunately, I was right. So I chopped off a small section of the tube and cut a slit all the way down it. Then I pried it apart until it looked like this and was big enough for my axle. I then drilled 2 small holes for a zip tie to be fed through and to secure 2 bigger zip ties to the back of it. Then my scrappy creation could be attached to my paddock stand and tested out.
Now this is a very crude method to solve the problem, but if this works, I might put more effort into this temporary solution and make it permanent. But my axle is in a safe place, it's not getting dirty, and this is MotoGP technology. 10 out of 10. You might have noticed one small flaw with this one. Motorcycles don't have floor mats, but I actually have a dish brush that I use to clean spoked wheels. And this video kind of looks like that, but on steroids. So I guess it's a good thing then that I have silver wheels that are covered in chain lube, look dreadful, and need a clean. I just need everything else now.
So after a productive trip to the toilet, I got to work. The chuck on my stolen drill wasn't big enough, so I had to make do with my old-fashioned one. It was going pretty well, getting into all the tight spaces really easily until I got too ambitious. Corded drills are just too powerful for stolen toilet brushes, so I chopped off the compromised bit and tried again. And as long as there's enough degreaser to keep things lubricated, it does the job. But it's like trying to ride an R1 slowly. You want to use all your drill's power, which it can't handle.
That is surprisingly effective, but it does struggle to get into the really tight places where a pressure washer wouldn't. And I do think a pressure washer is still substantially faster, but in certain scenarios, this does have a place. So 6 out of 10.
Here's a little tip for you peasants. Screws right in.
This is my first funnel. This thing is too wide to get into tight places. So this is my second funnel with a nice bendy pipe. It's good at getting into tight places, but this corrugated pipe is a pain to clean. So I created this, my original funnel with a piece of garden hose attached to it. This works really well, and I thought this was a very cheap and janky solution, but apparently a Coke bottle can be an even cheaper and jankier solution.
I don't doubt the bottle's ability to direct liquid, so at first, I thought all that mattered was the diameter of the oil filler. And it was a perfect fit. And unsurprisingly, metal threads effortlessly bite into the plastic, which makes it unnecessarily sturdy. However, I suspect a lot of oil will just pool up in this dip, making a bigger mess in the long run.
A lot depends on your oil filler location, its angle, and your sugary beverage of choice. But assuming this is all you have in a pinch at the racetrack, for example, and it makes your life a bit easier, then I can almost recommend it. 5 out of 10. And sticking on the strangest ways to clean your bike, this kind of looks like budget brake cleaner. If you've ever used brake cleaner or chain cleaner or any type of cleaner that's in an aerosol can, you'll know that the chemical helps a lot, but so does just the pressure in the can. It helps to blast dirt off. But those types of cleaners are very expensive, and it's easy to go through an entire can pretty quickly when you're having fun with it. Hence why this isn't even brake cleaner, it's just chain lube. So maybe this guy is onto something.
This is quickly becoming a very unhealthy video, but I mixed up a degreaser solution in a 2-liter bottle, pierced a little hole in the top cap, and located the dirtiest place by far on a bike, behind the front sprocket cover where chain lube goes to die. Except it was way cleaner than I expected. Nevertheless, I gave the budget brake cleaner hack a try, and at times it looked promising, and at times it felt like it might explode. But did it work?
Yes and no. It is very effective at covering an area in degreaser, and it probably could dislodge very light dirt, but the pressures are nowhere near an aerosol can, making it useless against built-up chain lube. But then again, most things are. So I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10 because I don't think it's worth the fuss. We've all seen a lot of solutions for this problem. There are cheap ones like toothpaste, medium-priced ones like dedicated sprays, and the most expensive option is a pin lock, which do actually work very well.
And yet, I usually just end up holding my breath anyway. But I've never actually tested any of these hack methods, so it's time to change that. With my visor divided, I cleaned one half with dish soap and left the other alone. To the touch, the dish soap side felt a little slimy, but visually it looked the same. And apparently, boiling water melts those cut edges of a Coke bottle pretty easily. But once the visor had steamed up, both sides looked pretty much the same. Although a dark visor is a terrible way to illustrate this. Why didn't anyone warn me?
So if you just clean your visor with dish soap like I did, it doesn't seem to work. But if you leave a layer of dish soap on your visor, it might work, but surely then it looks blurry and oily. Either way, 3 out of 10. And finally, let's test the stupidest motorcycle hack I've ever seen. So the immediate solution to this made-up problem is obvious. Just wear motorcycle boots. But the awkward part is that I have the exact same mark on my Vans right now.
Because I wear boots 99% of the time, but every now and then life happens, and I just shoot to the store in normal shoes.
It's stupid, but it happens.
So let's test the sock theory. I looked ridiculous right away, even more than normal, and I felt sorry for the other lonely sock still stuck in my sock drawer all by itself.
And of course it works. Why wouldn't it? For stupid problems come stupid solutions. But you know the part that annoys me most of all about this? Is that every time I see the black smudge on my left shoe, I actually really like it. It reminds me of my bikes. Now, I'm not a sneakerhead and I don't care about shoes in the slightest. But if you aren't fond of your smudge from your gear lever, you should probably sell your bike and buy an Audi TT.
Minus 10 out of 10.
But anyway, let me know which absurd hack is your favorite, or if you've ever successfully tested any hacks in the past, and I'll see you on the next ride.